fans, welcome to Rise and Drive Team Radio, the ultimate IndyCar fan podcast. I'm Kaz. I'm here with Harvey, and today we're going to be doing a very daunting episode, which is a season recap. Harvey, I want you to get us started at a really high level. Talk about 2025 and what the major themes and trends we saw were.
Well, the biggest news coming out of 2025 was, of course, Alex's fourth championship. Not many people have done that, but dig a little deeper. And the thing that is even more impressive about this year for Alex is he is the fourth driver to win three consecutive championships.
Okay.
So only four drivers have done that. Ted Horn, Sebastian Bourdais, and Dario Franchitti did that years ago for Chip Ganassi. So, that
Chip can't be too upset about that.
No, he can't be. And this is the 17th championship for Ganassi, so that ties them with Penske for team championships. Or for overall championships. So that'll be an interesting battle next year if Penske can come back, not wanting
Let
to
me
get
ask
past.
you, do you know if any driver has won four consecutive?
I don't know that off the top of my head. We'll look at that for next week's podcast. I'll try to dig that piece of data up. But yeah, and then the other thing about this season, though it was so dominated, the news was dominated by Alex Palou. There were 7 different winners this season. That's as many as there were last year, and there were 16 different drivers on the podium. So with most races starting 27 drivers, that's a pretty solid number when you think about how many people managed to grab a podium place. So overall, maybe people get bored with Alex winning a lot, but he didn't dominate the racing the way he dominated the news about the racing, I think, which is interesting. And as we get into each individual race, you kind of see that within the race itself. Yes, in many cases, he led a ton of laps, but he wasn't leading every lap of every race.
There were races where I had not counted him out. You never count Alex Palou out unless he's DNF'd. But there were races where I wasn't really looking at him until the last 20, 30 laps.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that we had as many winners as we had last year. You think about them as two completely different seasons, and they were, but hearing it that way kind of solidifies what I was thinking as I'm watching it, which is, sure, we've got the same guy on the top step over and over, but the races themselves are still exciting. And just because the championship fight isn't great doesn't mean that the fight for second, for third, for rookie of the year, all of these other things, Penske improving their position toward the end of the season after they had that dire start. There are so many great things outside of who won the championship that made this season really thrilling.
Yeah, I know that it felt like coming to the end of the season that Fox was really kind of bummed out that Alex wrapped the season up with 2 races left to go. But, I think for people who really enjoy racing and enjoy all the stories that go along with it, the season championship isn't, honestly, for me, it isn't the big story. Yeah, that's great. He won this championship, but as we saw, the race in Milwaukee, the race in Nashville, you saw 2 phenomenal races after the championship was concluded. So I don't think there's any reason for anyone to be disappointed that happened a couple races early.
And you know what? This too, at the beginning of the season, after the first half, you would have thought Alex was going to win way before 2 races left.
That's true.
The fact that they even had the opportunity to pretend, because there was that little while where they were like, well, Pato, maybe he's going to do it. And we're like, no, he's not. Stop talking about it. But the fact that they were able to even have that conversation is actually pretty wild when you consider how the season started, which was Alex, little Kyle Kirkwood, little bit of Kyle.
Yeah. Well, and there was one other story that maybe people didn't see because and I think it's a great one this season, and it involves Alex's teammate Scott Dixon.
Mm-hmm.
Scott is now IndyCar's Iron Man. He has started more races than any other driver in the history of this series. Scott
Wow.
has 419 starts. That passed Mario Andretti this year, who had 408. So talk about longevity and competitiveness. He won a race this year, right?
He's not an old guy limping through the field trying to finish laps. He is
Yeah,
he placed third in the championship. He is in contention to win races. He won one, was running up at the front, many more,
right.
and could have had more race wins.
Yeah,
So,
Road America, if he, doesn't have to stop for a splash, he's definitely challenging for the win on that one. So,
and I don't think he's showing us any signs at all that he's thinking about winding his career down.
no, I think Ganassi is very, very happy to have him in that seat as long as he wants to be in that seat. He is still a fast, fast driver. So, so those are kind
That's
of,
just hard to, yeah, that's
yeah.
amazing.
But, and actually, there's one more story that we need to talk about. And this one we'll probably go into more depth on. This year is the first year that Fox had the broadcast rights to Indy and
Mhm.
what that has meant for the series. And I think we should take a few minutes and talk about that now because it was important. I mean, ratings were up big time for the series this year. Most of that is attributed to Indy, but not all. There were some significant upswings, like the St. Pete race was over 1,400,000 in viewership, which is huge for a race that isn't called the Indy 500, right?
I don't think the average American could tell you what race starts the IndyCar season. Even the average American sports fan might not be able to tell you what race starts the IndyCar season. So, yeah, I totally agree. And I attribute a lot of that to that preseason marketing that they did, those driver focused ads,
Yeah.
Joseph Newgarden's jawline and Tom Brady and Pato, the little rock star, and it was a lot of fun to watch those promos. Even as somebody who was already going to be watching those races, I wanted to watch them more, and it really made me anticipate the season.
Yeah, I think they did a great job of building up that anticipation preseason, and it shows in getting decent viewership on that first race. And it's the other thing is that when they got to the race, you had this new broadcast team, and I know you have specifically some thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, look, we knew that Bell and Hinchcliffe were going to be great together. They've broadcast together in the past. They moved over to Fox. They have great chemistry. We know they know what they're talking about. The question mark was Will Buxton moving
Right.
over from primarily being a Formula One commentator into IndyCar. A lot of the people who know Will Buxton know him most from Drive to Survive, where like I'm on Reddit all the time. He gets picked on constantly for his obvious explanations, and there's a reason that he does that on Drive to Survive, and it's Drive to Survive is partially meant to be an intro for new fans. So of
Right.
course when he's explaining what an undercut is, any Formula One fan knows what an undercut is, but maybe somebody who's just tuning in to watch this with their friends doesn't. So you have to have somebody with that kind of gravitas explaining it. And that was Buxton. I didn't know, though, what he was going to be like commenting on IndyCar. I didn't know where his enthusiasm for the sport was, and I didn't know where his knowledge was. And I just have to say that I was overall really incredibly impressed, even from St. Pete. When he was new to commenting on IndyCar, he came into it with a lot of enthusiasm, which
Yeah.
then rubbed off on everybody else. You can tell this guy loves watching racing and has a lot to say about it. And by the end of the season, he had picked up a whole lot of nuance that he didn't have at the start of the season. I was overall really impressed with him as an addition to the team. I think he folded right in. And then the other thing that he does really well is when he interviews drivers, he is excellent at getting to their humanity, who they are as people, and how that affects how they race. And I think humanizing drivers is something that's going to help that viewership that we were just talking about.
Right. I think specifically that interview with Alex Palou at the end of the season where he talked about his family and how that changed his perspective on the
Mm-hmm.
sport and what his daughter meant to him. We should link to that in the comments. I'll definitely do that. But I thought that was I think I'm sure IndyCar has that online or Fox has that online, so we can link to it in the comments. But
It was a
people
touching
should
little
look at that.
moment.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was great. It was the type of thing that IndyCar needs more of. Formula One started booming because of Drive to Survive, and that series really brought the drivers into as people into the living rooms of race and non-race fans alike, right? I mean, I'd
Hmm.
been a Formula One fan for since the 70s,
Yeah.
right? But you never got to see the drama or the personalities or that before that. And so it,
Except with Kimmy. He was
right.
always pretty open about who he was.
Yeah. But so to get a sense of the drivers more in IndyCar, I think is critical to growing that sport here and really talking to them about who they are as people and not just asking them questions about how they race and which tracks they like and what's going on with their car and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. That's all great, to know if going into a race, but to really understand them and care, to start to care about them as people. I think it really is important to the overall growth of the sport. And I can't wait to see them do more of that. And hopefully we'll start getting some driver interviews and we can do some of that ourselves. So
And to be clear here, I know Drive to Survive takes a lot of criticism for being overly dramatized and for not necessarily always showing us who they actually are as people, but showing them who they are as a caricature. That's not what we're asking for here. I
right.
don't want IndyCar as a reality TV show. I just, I root more when I know who you are. Show me your soul, and I'll be more excited to watch you drive your car.
That's right. And the best part is when they drive those cars, we get really exciting racing in IndyCar. I mean, the amount of on-track passes, the quality of the car control on some of the most difficult circuits in the world when you think about some of the
Hmm.
street circuits like St. Pete and Toronto and Detroit for God's sake.
Yeah.
There's really tough driving those are tough tracks. And then you have the grandeur of the Indy 500 and all that. There's just so many great things. And it's such a big story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, overall, I thought that for Fox's intro season, excellent job. You ticked a whole bunch of boxes. You put together a great commenting team. The promos were solid. You kind of started pulling us in to who these people are. One criticism, though, I think the graphics need some significant retooling.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it feels like they copied a lot of what was going on with F1, in terms of like the thing on the halo, and
Sure.
all of that. Those things they're fine. It's nice to see that stuff,
The
but
thing on the Halo is not my big complaint. My biggest complaint is the leaderboard.
right,
I do not like stretching out the top five and making them big and putting their face there and the color of their car. I don't need that. I want all 27 drivers on one list. I
right,
hate when I'm trying to find out Will Power just did a pit stop and now he's somewhere between 15 and 21. And where is he? Wait for it to scroll. Wait
right,
for it to scroll. Oh, something's going on track. Watch, watch, watch. And then as soon as I cut back to the leaderboard, 15 through 22 is gone.
right.
So I still don't have this answer to my question. Don't do the big stretch out. Make the font slightly smaller, and you can fit all 27 drivers. The font is huge. The race logo at the top is huge. Just shrink that a little bit so that we can have a full
Yeah,
leaderboard.
we're all watching these races on, 50-inch high definition TVs. So
Hmm.
you can take a little bit more real estate to, or shrink down the graphics a bit to make sure we have everyone on screen all the time so we
at
can
the same
see it.
time.
And on races where tire strategy is important, I would like to see who's run what and what they have left.
Yes.
And I know they do this through periodically throughout the race, but time
They'll
since last pit stop is
mhm.
also a big one that I'd like
they'll
to know more of.
they'll on occasion pop up tire info, but it's
Right.
not consistent. And it doesn't even need, like, I don't necessarily even need time since last pit stop always there. If you just pop it up when it's relevant, like toward the beginning of a pit window, that's fine. But there should definitely be an easy, just color-coded way to indicate who's on what tire at any given time.
Sure.
Highlight a name in red or green or black. You
Right.
know, that's not that challenging, and that's information that I want to have all the time. I have asked myself and my husband many times this year, wait, what tire is he on? And then you have to wait until you can see the side of the car and get the ring on the tire.
And even sometimes it's not as clear visually on those
Hmm.
tires as it is, say, in the on the F1 tires, where you really know if they're running a hard, medium, or soft. So,
And watching the highlights of the races that we're going to talk about today, in preparation for this episode, I noticed multiple occasions where there would be two drivers in a fight, and they would only show me how much push to pass one of them has left.
right.
That doesn't give me any information at all. Okay, Dixon has 55 seconds left. Palou's in front of him. How much push to pass does Palou have?
Right.
Dixon's 55 means nothing if I
And
don't know how much Palou has.
and push to pass is huge in this
Yeah.
sport, right? It's really critical to knowing whether or not someone has the opportunity to overtake.
Mhm.
It makes a big difference. That's a huge horsepower boost. So,
So a couple of, well, all of the improvements we've suggested seem like such small little tweaks. I really feel like they would improve the viewing experience so significantly. And I really, really hope that Fox takes a beat over the off season, has somebody come look at that, listen to some fan feedback, do some focus grouping and see what works. Because I think we can do worlds better with the graphics, and it'll
yeah,
it'll just make a better viewing experience.
I got it. Yeah, I hopefully they're listening.
Yeah, listen up, Fox.
We got some thoughts. You did a phenomenal job, but as with anything, you can always get better. So
Sure can.
great job with the announcing team. Really nice job with the overall coverage. And they did a good job of covering not just the lead packs in a race.
Yeah.
They did a good job of covering the racing up and down the grid as it would happen through the race. And again, that's one of the beauties of IndyCar, where uh, you know every position is meaningful, whether
Hmm.
you're finishing 22nd or whether you're finishing fifth. there
Hmm.
there are points to be awarded in all of those places, so those passes on track matter, and that's why the racing is so good up and down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you on that. I felt very frequently like no matter where we were, I was probably watching the most interesting thing going on at any given moment. Race starts are the exception to that, but obviously you can't. You show the leader on the race start.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Connor Daly's in the back zipping through people. You do want to show the leader on the start. So I
Sure.
get it.
Yep. So, should we talk about the races themselves?
Yes, my
Yes.
favorite part.
Okay. Well, first of all, because we don't want this to take 47 hours, we're going to divide the season into two. We're
Yeah,
going to
we
talk.
looked at a full season and too much
Yeah.
information.
Well, plus it actually there's this sort of natural break in how the season flowed, and so
Mhm.
today we're going to talk about St. Pete through Road America. Let's call this the Alex Palou half of the season, I guess, for
Right?
lack of a better term. He won 6 of the 9 races in this section of on this half of the season. So, and it started at St. Pete, but, leading up to the race, we didn't, it was You had McLaughlin in P1. You had a lot of other people up there. It felt like, it was going to be wide open going into the
After
race.
after qualifiers, Scott McLaughlin on pole. Alex started eighth, which is a low qualifier for him. I, I don't have it in front of me, but got to be one of his lowest of the season, right in the first
Sure.
race. And then Pato Award, the other driver who going into the season, everybody was talking about his Pato started P23 on that first race, which is a huge surprise going into the first race of the season. So you're right. You didn't get the sense after qualifying at St. Pete that this first half was going to be all about one guy.
Yeah, exactly. But then the race started and we got a really, really good race. I mean, 20 cars finished, or 23 cars finished. 20 of those were on the lead lap. This was sort of the first, hint at maybe some bad Penske luck, with, McLaughlin running strong early, but, all the problems happening with power and other folks. So I
Well,
don't know.
and they started to lose grip by the end of the race, which is so interesting because toward the end of the season they were excellent on their tires. So that was an early indicator that like, hey, Penske might not have what we're used to them bringing in terms of advantage in tire management and strategy.
Yeah, I mean, Newgarden was so fast in those last 15 laps, and it really looked like, he was going to close down and make that happen. But
Mhm.
it
That last
just,
second pass by Dixon was beautiful to watch, but it was
yep,
really clear that Newgarden didn't have an answer. And
yeah,
it wasn't because of him, it was because of the way those tires were starting to go.
exactly. And so it was just, it was a really good start to the season because there was a lot of it, a lot of action on track. There was a lot of uncertainty going into the race and not a ton of clarity coming out of it, right? We did see obviously the two Ganassi cars finishing high, but it didn't feel that dominant at that point.
Mhm.
And Penske's looked like they were going to be competitive. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And you know what else I I'm gonna say this early and get it out of the way because this is where I was really stupid early season. I was sleeping on Christian Lundgaard.
yeah.
Going back through and watching the extended highlights from the first nine races of the season, starting in St. Pete, Lundgaard was impressive up and down. Um, he ran a majority of this race in the top three, four. I think he finished eighth eventually, and there was a strategy decision there that put him there. Okay, sometimes you call it wrong, but he was racing so well, and I'm embarrassed to say that I was sleeping on him. And it wasn't until halfway through the season that I really started paying attention to the fact that McLaren had more drivers than Pato at all. And Lundgaard deserved that attention way earlier than I gave it to him.
Yeah,
So.
he's one of those guys who just kind of snuck up on everybody this season.
Mhm.
I think that's a good call for sure.
Yeah, and it started at St. Pete.
Yeah. So that was St. Pete. Any other thoughts on it? I just felt like it was a really good kickoff to the season.
It was a great intro. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. That
And
was
then
that was how I felt coming away.
and then Fox got dealt a really crummy hand by having the second race of the season at Thermal, which we can all agree needs to go away. It's
I
a
don't like thermal at all.
it's not a great track. It's a club track. I've driven
Yeah,
on it. I do BMW events there. And it's fine for that kind of stuff, but it's not an IndyCar track. You can't Fans can't come watch the race. I think they sell 5,000 tickets for the race or something like that.
ridiculous.
Uh, and and the race itself was not what we want from an IndyCar race. There were only 6 lead changes and 3 leaders in that race. It doesn't produce the kind of racing that IndyCar is known for. Um, you know,
In terms of wheel to wheel action, it was one of if not the most boring race for me in this first half of the season. And then there's this too. I get why a club track needs to be reconfigurable in that way, but for a viewing experience, it's terrible. You've just got these thin white barriers, and when you're watching cars come around the corner at this speed, it takes another second for your brain to connect where they're going to go. You
Right.
can't zoom out and get a full scope of the track.
Yeah,
And that's,
it's almost like an autocross course,
yeah,
where it's like, oh, we'll just change it this time for this one. I am not a fan of that track for IndyCar. I'm a fan of driving that track. Like I said, I've
sure.
driven it a ton of times. I chased Bill Oberlin around there in a BMW M5 competition, 135 miles an hour going into that big turn. It's a blast. Don't get me
I'm sure
wrong,
it is.
but it's not an IndyCar track. So,
And
um,
then and
you
then the
know,
other thing I do want to say about it, like and this is maybe more personal than it is anything. It feels like an IndyCar race for rich people. Like it
yes,
doesn't feel like it's for all of us.
right. Yeah, I mean,
And
because
that's
that's
oh,
what
they
that,
only sell 5,000 tickets, probably largely just to members.
right.
And I looked it up. It is a minimum $600,000 investment to
Oh, yeah.
join thermal.
And then you got to
Uh
build a house and, you got to
yeah.
build your thing there. And then you've got to pay your dues and keep your cars there and all the rest of it. No,
It just
that's not a cheap hobby.
it's not a race for us. It's a race for people who already have thermal. So give it to us.
Yeah.
IndyCar is for the people.
There you go. That's right. Let's do it. Let's find I'm sure. Well, there are a ton of other great tracks from the history of IndyCar that will be on the schedule next year. And as soon as we find out, my hope is that that one is gone.
I'm really crossing my fingers to see thermal cut. Sorry guys, it's just not my race.
Right.
And if it's there, I'll watch it. And I'll. But
However, the race after that, Long Beach, was hella exciting.
I love a street race. I really do. I know that that's a rare opinion, but I think street races are so fun. They all represent the city that they're in so well, and that's something that I really enjoy about them. And I think the drivers tend to get their elbows out a little bit more on street races than they do for road courses, so that's fun for me as
Yeah,
well.
there's always some frisky driving on those.
Hmm.
And on this race, there were 9 lead changes and 6 leaders, so a little better than the previous week so a little better than at Thermal.
Hmm.
But and then the other interesting thing about this race is there were 5 teams in the top 5.
Yeah.
So again,
And
highlighting that competitiveness that, yeah, Kirkwood finally pulled off the win, right? And that was great to get another winner. And no, we weren't going to be in a runaway season, but there it was a really interesting race with a lot of different strategies involved.
the most exciting thing about Kirkwood pulling off the win here for me was that it wasn't an Alex DNF or an Alex made mistakes. Kirkwood pulled off a better strategy and made no mistakes to run a better race than Alex while he also did a great job. It's pretty rare we get a track where the overcut is the better strategy. I thought that that was so interesting, how Kirkwood would just wait until Alex went in and then come in the next lap, not give him enough time on the fresher tires, but
Right.
still be able to stretch that gap, not let Alex get close enough in that extra lap. I think it's really fun to watch an overcut race. It's something that we don't get to see very often, and really impressive that he made that call. And then the other thing that I thought was really funny from Kirkwood is when he got out of the car, great to get my win, blah, 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 blah. And then he says, we're super upset that Palou finished second. So
Yeah.
I feel like at this point, all the drivers already knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having
Yeah. They
watched
were,
Alex do what he did in the first two, they all already knew, if I'm going to win this season, I think I have to win every race
yeah.
because Alex is going to be in the top five almost all the time.
Well, and that's the other thing about this race, and rare for a street race. There were no cautions.
Yeah.
There were
On a street
20,
race.
yeah, there were 27 cars finished the race. 20 of those were on the lead lap. That track produces really good racing. It's a street course that it doesn't impede the racing the way some do.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And this is also the first race where I really started to say, is something going on at Penske?
yeah. Yeah, when they had that
Something going
seatbelt
on?
issue,
Yeah.
what the heck? Just the stuff that never happens
Yeah.
happened to them.
Yeah. Multiple times throughout the race. And they hadn't looked great at thermal either, but one you can write off.
Right.
When when a team like Penske has two unforced error riddled races in a row, you've got to wonder what's up. And I expected a faster turnaround, but as we're going to discuss, it was more of a descent than
Yeah,
anything.
exactly. I mean, they started the season feeling like, okay,
It was okay.
yeah.
Wasn't
Um,
great, but it was okay.
yeah. And then it just was a slow, long downhill.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then we moved on to Barber, which is a great road course, really beautiful, scenic location.
Mhm.
I think it led to some good racing. The race itself, however, again, there were only six lead changes in this one, and Alex really dominated. If anything, to me, this felt more like an F1 race than an
Yeah.
IndyCar race.
Didn't he take this one by like 12 to 15 seconds, something
16
in there?
seconds, and he
Ugh.
led 81 of the 90 laps. So, that's a race where I think the track, while there was some really good racing up and down the field again, I think Lundgaard was particularly spectacular in that race and had
Lundgaard
some
was great at Barber.
really good passes. I thought, his aggression really started to show in that race. Um,
Another driver who showed something unexpected in that race in the opposite direction. This is something that I maybe thought a little bit during the season and then said, nope, put it out of your mind. Um, Colton Herta had a really unimpressive season.
yeah,
And watching the recaps, as I did this morning, all in a big lump, Barber was the race where it really settled in for me that, by the end of the season, I was saying, I'm not seeing from Colton what I expect to see from Colton. I should have been saying that back at Barber. That's when it really stuck out. And something Colton Herta in these first nine races of the season, legendary guy for his young age.
right.
People have been talking about him for years. He's got all this history. He grew up with the Andretti family.
Yeah, his
Colton
dad's a
Herta improved his starting position one time in these first nine races.
wow.
And in that particular race, he was starting 24. So yeah, you better improve from 24. Like it,
Yeah,
do you think he was already talking to Cadillac and just
I
like a little checked out? It
I
didn't
don't know.
feel like Colton,
I can't imagine that though. When you're in the car, you're in the car and you're
right?
driving and you're with a team like that, that Andretti is legendary and they're demanding performance from their drivers. I can't imagine that he was checked out, but at the same time, how else do we explain this type of performance when his other teammate, when Kirkwood was performing, right?
You can't blame the car in these nine races. Kirkwood won two.
Yeah.
It's not the car or the team. And he didn't do it. There weren't a whole lot of moments at all during the season when I thought he looked bad. I was just never in. I don't think
I
that
mean,
I
he
would describe 2025 Colton Herta as a top tier driver.
No,
And
I
I
mean,
know he's a top tier driver.
yeah, I mean, he had that P1 in Detroit, right? And
Yeah.
for pole. So it's not like he didn't have the speed. He just yeah,
There's not really an explanation for it that I can see. I agree with you. I feel almost rude and disrespectful suggesting maybe he was already talking to Cadillac and checked out. It's just the only thing I could think of.
right. I don't know.
I, Everybody has an off day. Maybe he's having an off year. That's okay. It was just surprising. And then this is also the race where I started looking at Rinus VeeKay a little bit. In contrast to Colton's um,
Hmm.
lack of improvement from his starting position in that same nine races, VK only dropped position twice. So
Right.
he improved his starting position in 7 out of 9 races. And I noticed that in Barber in particular, because that's where he had his best race, finished in fourth, started in fifth. To me, what that says is, he's in the Dale Coyne right now. That's not a car that's always going to give you a great qualifying position. But if he gets up there, he can hold on to it.
Right. Well, and he's not in Dale Coyne
Yeah, well,
anymore,
yeah, he
right?
refused the extension. So we'll talk about silly season. I I
Yeah.
have my fingers crossed for him at AJ Foyt personally. We're all assuming Malukas is taking that Penske seat. So
Right. Right.
I I think a team higher up should be looking at Renus VK, and I hope they are.
Yeah.
I would imagine they are. Why would you turn down an extension if you don't have other interest? So
I would guess. I mean, and one little side note on the silly season. I mean, the way the whole Herta power everything happened, that was all done before the season was
oh yeah.
over. All of
Yeah.
that. You can't do that in 3 days,
No.
And so
During the broadcast at Nashville, they mentioned that Power had a meeting with Penske immediately after the race. You
right.
knew that was going to be them letting him go.
Well, and I mean, as we found out, he had a meeting with Penske. Penske wanted to meet with him in Detroit,
Yeah.
and basically at that point, I think Penske offered him a 1 year extension, and he said, "No,
I'm
thanks."
better than that.
Yep.
I'm Will
So
Power.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now we go to Indy, to the
Yeah.
Sancio Grand Prix, the road course at Indy, which is, for an oval road course, it's a
It's a
decent
nice
track.
little it's a nice little track.
Yeah,
I
there's
didn't hate it.
no plenty of passing opportunities that run down into turn one on the front straight where they're going the wrong way. It's always interesting. It's always funny to watch cars going the wrong way at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
You know who else was really fun to watch this race was Graham Rahal. We talked at the beginning of this episode about how many different drivers we've had on the podium this year. And this is a great example of why that's exciting. Sometimes there's a guy who we know to be a good driver. He's a race winner. He's in a good car, but he's not really in the championship mix. He's not often on the podium, so we're just not talking about him or paying attention to him as much as maybe we could. Getting an opportunity to see him, he led so many laps this week or this race this week.
Yeah.
He went wheel to wheel with Alex for a long period of time and came out better on a couple of those occasions. If he hadn't had that long pit stop, I am pretty sure he would have wound up with a podium finish there. And it's nice to see that from a guy like Graham.
Yeah, and I loved his, you could tell this meant a lot to him. That radio call where he's like, "Get this guy out of my way,"
Yeah.
where he really wanted to be able to go and try to pull away from Alex at that point. But he couldn't pass him, which was too bad because it might have changed his race a little bit again as well. But that happens, and it's RLL is one of those teams that I would think should be doing better. They're an experienced team. They're led by a legend in Bobby Rahal,
Mm-hmm.
and actually it's really fun. I got to meet him a few years ago at a place called Autobahn Country Club in Detroit. It's basically Chicago, or in Chicago. It's basically, let me start that again. I got to meet him a few years ago
Oh.
uh, at Autobahn Country Club. It's basically Chicago's version of Thermal. It's a little
Why'd they
club
let
track.
you in?
Yeah, well, because I'm a journalist. So, but we were doing a program there, and Bobby hosted us for dinner at his garage there,
Oh,
and
wow.
he has his car that he won the Indy 500 in that garage. So we got to be in there. I got to ask him a bunch of questions. That was super fun. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
so love to see those guys do better. Let's hope they figure something out in the off season. But great to see him running well in this race, and that race was a really nice lead into the 500. The other thing I took away from that race was um, that Alex is really a patient driver.
Yeah.
Right. Patience was a big part of his strategy this year. He didn't go out and just push his way to the front and then try to win from the lead. He just said, "Look, as long as I'm close, I know we can find a way to win these things. And that was really evident in that race.
Yeah, you're so right about that. By the end of the season, if Alex wasn't in the lead, we were at a point where we were all just saying to ourselves, oh, he's saving power so that he can make a stronger push at the end. And almost all the time, that is exactly what happened. This is where we first really started to see this guy has a strategy that's not just about pushing his way to the front.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was solid. So that race ended up with, Alex winning again. And then we go to the big one, right? The
The
500.
500.
What?
Okay, there's just a lot to talk about the 500.
I know, and we're already getting long here, so let's
Yeah,
go. Let's get
we're
right
gonna run
into it.
through them. We're gonna run through them. We knew this was gonna be a long episode. It is what it is. Okay, so it's Penske that we have to talk about
Yeah,
big time here. This was if they were on a slow descent, this was the explosion. This was
right.
the crash and burn. The horrendous qualifying.
Yeah,
Okay, Scott McLaughlin didn't even make the Fast 12. Turned out to be lucky for him
right.
because they couldn't check to see if he was driving the illegal attenuator the day before. You feel so bad for the drivers here. Unlike the push to pass scandal the year before, I really firmly believe that the drivers had no awareness that anything was wrong with their car. And you could see how pissed off Joseph was when he was running around the track. It's just it's such a frustrating thing and also a kind of fun story for us to follow. And then once the race starts, Scott, who had the
Yeah.
luck of not getting knocked back, loses it on the outlap. My husband is possibly Scott McLaughlin's biggest fan. He wanted to turn off the race.
Yeah.
I had to hide the remotes.
I
He's
mean,
like, no, we're not going to not watch the race. But
and that was the craziest thing. You had a rookie on the pole who
mhm,
had an awesome start, and you had one of the, most proven veterans in the sport pull a rookie mistake,
yeah,
warming up his tires and spinning it. It just, that's not something that happens.
he
It
beefed it. And yeah,
yeah,
that's not Scott McLaughlin. And
no,
then Penske's bad luck continued. It didn't look like it was going to. You've got Newgarden clawing his way up from
from
33rd to his peak position, I believe was 6.
right.
And then they mess up his fuel pressure.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what happened there? Something failed, obviously, in the car. So it was, did somebody miss something in pre-race inspection, putting the car together, whatever? Did a part fail? Who knows? But it again, this was like you talked about, maybe the lowest point of the season for Penske luck, to have this kind of stuff happen.
That was really we've been kind of watching them prior to this one thinking like something's going on. They're not doing very well. They seem to be running into a lot of amateur mistakes and also just you're right, sometimes pure bad luck, which is a part of racing. This race in particular was the one where it wasn't I think something's going on. It was something is wrong.
Right. Well, and that was the race where those three guys were shown the door, right? Right after
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it it was a tough one for Penske. But on the flip side, there were some really, really good and interesting stories. First of all, I need to ask you a question.
Okay.
Who led the most laps this
I
year?
think it was Takuma Sato.
It was. And you know who was second?
Um Was it Erickson?
Ryan Hunter-Ray.
No
I
way.
thought I was watching a race from 2015, at one point with these guys
That's
running up front.
wild.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just one of those things that as you're watching the race, you're saying, where are these guys coming from? And again, just phenomenal to see these guys who are veterans and legends of the sport
hmm
still being able to perform at that very, very high level. So,
I love Takuma Sato. I love his story. I love that he's a teacher who just loves the 500 so much that he comes back for it every year and his students come and watch him do it. And that's so cool. And we all have favorites and not favorites. And I feel like in IndyCar generally, like I have a few drivers who I particularly tend to favor, but for the most part, each race there's something different that I want to happen. But for the 500, almost every year, I'm there rooting for Takuma Sato. So I loved watching him do so well, and
But
it was a shame he couldn't close it out. But
well, and that brings up the other thing that was a big surprise in this race is how important the pit stops became and how
mm-hmm.
bad pit stops really blew a bunch of races for people. I mean,
Yeah,
Takuma overshooting his box, Schwartzman, Herta,
yeah,
had that
Schwartzman, who you said had a great start, and I,
and ran over half his team
yeah,
coming into the pit. It's like,
I forgot
oh,
about that stuff.
yeah, it's just, and VK, coming into the pits and losing his brakes and spinning and,
Yeah.
crashing out.
You hear through the radio, I don't have brakes. I don't have brakes.
Yeah.
Like going into pit lane.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. There were a lot of weird pit issues at the 500 this year, which
Yeah.
you're right, made
Rossi's
for
fire, just one thing after another. It
took
was,
off his gloves and hurled them.
yeah. Yeah. And again, this is another race where Alex's patience just paid off, right?
Yeah.
He didn't lead the most laps. He, just hung around and was close enough when it mattered, right?
He was running 4 or 5 a majority of the race, it felt like. And yeah, right at the end, he's like, wait, hang on. I have a little bit more than you do, and I'm going to use it.
Yeah. And it ended up with a really nice podium that was
Yeah.
completely changed after penalties were handed out.
Yeah, that's right. Erickson finishing second, and
Then
then the
gets
disqualification.
gets dumped to the back, and that gives Maluka second place there, right?
Yeah, which also Malukas is a guy who talked about needing to improve on ovals going into this season. So
Right.
for him to be in, even if he had finished third, for him to be on the podium at the Indy 500, if your goal is to improve on ovals,
Yeah.
that is a great
Look,
thing to
a
have.
top 10 finish at Indy
Yeah.
would have been a big improvement for him. So to have him finish on the podium and move up a step thanks to the penalties was, that was awesome.
Now,
Really
you know
good.
who this race probably meant more than almost any other driver on the grid?
Hmm.
Pato Award. Guy
Mhm.
who's wanted to win this race forever, who almost won the year before. And he had I actually don't what's the point I'm trying to make is not about his race performance,
Right.
which was overall fine. I could not believe that Zach Brown chose to watch a parade in Monaco as opposed to coming to support Pato Award and his team starting from second position at the Indy 500. It is harder to win the Indy 500 from any position on the grid than it is to win the Monaco Grand Prix from pole. Go watch Lando win the pole, celebrate with him like he won, and then get on a plane and support Pato. I feel weird about it. It makes me wonder how much support Aero McLaren gets in comparison to McLaren's other motorsport.
Well, there's that question because, what does McLaren get from a benefit of Indy since the car's
Yeah,
not a McLaren car, it's not a
yeah.
McLaren powertrain, it's not, any of that. It's really just a marketing,
Hmm.
thing for them, I think, at this point. But the other thing, and maybe this is why he stuck around in Monaco, is that's where the money is, baby. If he's looking to make sure he has people to invest in his F1 team and,
Sure.
buy McLaren cars and all that stuff, I'm sure there are a ton of customers and a ton of supporters at Monaco. So I would have preferred to have seen him at Indy, but if he had business interests that kept him in Monaco, if he stayed for the racing, he's
He picked
wrong.
wrong.
If he stayed for business reasons, then you got to do what you got to
You know
do.
what? Okay, I guess I sometimes I get too into the sport and don't consider the business, and you probably have a fair point there. But I don't know. It just felt a little like, come on, man.
Yeah.
I can't believe
Well,
I can't
especially
believe you're
since
not going to be here for Pato here.
especially
Lando
since he
already
came
won.
so close the previous year.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things where you really, he'll get one.
Yeah.
He'll get one.
Oh, he will. Yeah. I mean, look, it took Alex a while. This was
Yeah.
Alex's, not just his first 500 win. This was Alex's first oval win.
Yeah.
So, what a great first oval to win on, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
I've never won on an oval.
I
I'm
didn't
going to go take the Indy 500.
I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. So we could talk about it. We could do a whole episode on Indy, but we have to move on because
Yeah.
we're talking about season highlights here.
Yeah.
And now we go to another. Honestly, I'm going to call it a little bit of a low light because I hate this track as well. I
Yeah.
love the city. I love Detroit. I grew up there. I used to work in the Renaissance Center doing advertising for Ford. And Detroit means a ton to me, as you know.
Yep.
Um, and but to see that track and to watch the racing it produces, I mean, first of all, it does a terrible job of showcasing downtown Detroit. Nothing about
Downtown.
that track makes the city look good and scenic and everything that it is, other than the quick shots of the waterfront.
For those listening who have never been to Detroit and don't really know a whole lot about it other than the way it's presented in media and what you see, you are just missing out. It's such a cool city that's so vibrant and could be showcased so much better by the track. Um, I thought that they did make one improvement on the year before, which is the hairpin.
Yeah, yeah.
Gentled it out a little bit, made it so that we weren't throwing a caution literally every lap on the hairpin. But
Yeah,
yeah, I there could
I mean, that track is 1.65 miles. It's not quite long enough for me for a road course. I'd like to see it, for a street course, like to see it
mhm,
just a little bit longer. And I
mhm.
think they could run it through a couple of other places in the city that would be spectacular. If they ran it through Grand Circus Park, which is, this beautiful park in the middle of downtown, that would be awesome. I think I I may take a run at a suggested track map for
I
those
was
guys.
gonna say I've got a homework assignment for you. Put together a suggestion.
Okay. I'll
Let's
I'll
take a look.
I'll take a look at that. But the racing again, it was good racing. It was
Yeah,
solid. I just wish the track itself were better,
yeah.
and again, a nice win for Kirkwood at this one, right? And
And Palou's only DNF of the season, which is interesting. Um, we
yeah.
would have if we were playing our predictions game for that race. Malukas would have been the bad one.
Oh yeah,
But
and he said, I mean, after
yeah,
the race, he said, "I've been doing this for 3 years. I can't believe I made that rookie mistake."
yeah.
You
And
know,
I don't want the fact that Alex DNF to take away from the race that Kirkwood drove. I think there's a really strong chance he would have won either way. So,
yeah, I mean, it's similar to Long Beach.
yeah,
He's good on these types of circuits. So
king of the streets, we
yeah,
say.
27 cars started, 20 finished that race, which is a solid number. There were, a few too many, I think, cautions because of people running into the back of each other and all of that, and that can be fixed with track design. Honestly,
Yeah,
that's a part of designing a proper track. So I would love to see them do a little better, but not a highlight race of the season. I think
yeah,
honestly, the Detroit race feels a little bit like we're going to Detroit for the auto companies
yeah,
and not as much for the race
yeah,
itself. And I'd like it to be more of a race. But, we're going to we'll talk about Detroit as a city. We'll talk about the race and the track when we do our overviews for next season of some of the
yeah.
things. And we'll let people know why they should go to Detroit, even if the racing isn't spectacular. So,
And you know what? Maybe they'll do a track redesign. Like I said, they did improve the hairpin. The
yeah.
2024 Detroit race was actually a little hard to watch
Yeah,
because
it
they would
was a
be under
joke.
caution and then immediately once they returned to green throw another caution because of the hairpin. So they looked at it, they made an improvement. Just do some more. Just
Yeah.
do more of that maybe.
I'll have some thoughts. I'll come up with a little design. I'll write a little article on why we do it, and we'll put it up under the IndyCar section on rides and drives.
Yeah,
So,
take a look everybody. It would be a better race.
so, so and then we go to
Speaking
our
of better
home
races,
track. We
no, you cannot skip St. Louis.
Oh, why did I have? Yeah, you're right. We have
You
to go to St.
cannot
Louis.
skip
No,
Bommarito,
that
if for
was
no other reason than I just love saying Bommarito. It's so much fun. But it was
that's
a great
right.
race. I
Oh
love a
yeah.
short oval.
No, that's it produced some great racing. A
Hmm.
lot of lead changes on this one, right? There was
Hmm.
what was it? 10 lead, no, 20 lead changes and 14 leaders in that race.
It was a really exciting race. And the other thing about this one that was significant for me in a bad way, I don't think I've hidden that I'm a fan of Joseph Newgarden and was really, really hoping to see him make a great run in the 500, and he got taken out again.
Yeah.
This guy's making a phenomenal charge up the grid, made his way all the way to the lead. And I'm finally, Joseph is getting the luck that he needs. And then he gets, I mean, there was no,
Yeah.
Louis got in
Nothing
the
you could do
marbles.
about it.
Louis slid around. You saw him try and swerve to avoid it, and there was just nothing he could do. I know it was one of the worst looking crashes I
Yeah.
think I've seen live in a
You
long
know,
time.
yeah, to see him kind of almost T-bone him like that, it was
And then he
and go up
almost flipped
over the wall.
over the pit wall and
Right.
ran, slid across the ground upside down. Thank God the cars are designed the way they are, because I think 20 years ago, there's a chance he doesn't walk out of that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
No,
it, from a safety perspective, yes, great job making the cars safer. From a Joseph Newgarden fan perspective, this is where I started to feel it's not just Penske bad luck. It feels like Newgarden's getting the brunt of it. Like I would say he had 50% of the bad luck and McLaughlin and Power split the other 50.
right.
I'm not saying they had easy clean seasons because they
No,
sure didn't,
they did not.
but Newgarden just so many again the attenuator not his fault. The seatbelt not his fault. The fuel pressure not his fault. Getting T-boned by Louis Foster not his fault. That's four massive, not his fault things that happened to him
Right.
over at this point 8 races. That's 3 DNFs because of something that had nothing to do with him or how he's driving over 8 races. That's just so frustrating. And as a fan, I started to get mad here.
Yeah. And it's too bad because it was a spectacular race. Otherwise, I thought the show at the start, when they lit off all those fireworks, that was super cool. The
It was
racing
really
itself
fun.
was solid. Like I said, a ton of lead changes, 14 different leaders. That's insane
Hmm.
out of 27 cars to have that many people have a crack at it, even with pit stop shuffling and all that, you usually don't see that many.
Yeah,
So,
that's a huge number.
and IndyCar is still really good on ovals, as we
Yeah.
saw. So
Yeah.
I'm glad they don't dominate the schedule, but I'm really glad that they're still there.
As a person who watched more Formula One before and started getting into IndyCar later, ovals took me a while. I kind of always viewed them as like the evil, that they're so dangerous and why do
Right.
they do them? And it didn't take watching many for me to get really excited about ovals. Now, I think they're my favorite. That's what I look forward to the most. I love ovals.
That's
And
great.
also one of my cats only watches ovals. And I think that that's really
That's
funny.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yes.
she'll walk right by the television for a street race or a road course, but if there's an oval on, she will put her paws up on the TV stand, get right up there. She loves an oval.
Well,
Me too,
yeah.
girl.
There you go. Now IndyCar just needs to start marketing to cats. So
They
start marketing
got
ovals to
one.
cat.
They got one fan.
There you go. Okay, so let's go to Road America and close up the first half of the season.
Right.
Road America being a true road course, one of the best road courses in the world.
We've got a lot of bias for Road America.
Yeah,
Obviously, grew up an hour and a half away from there, but my God, what a perfect place to
yeah,
have a day at the track.
yeah.
Can't do better.
Great day at the track and a really phenomenal race. It's funny because when you're at the track, it's so big, right? You
Hmm.
4 miles to cover. We walked what did we walk, like 10 miles that day easily?
It was
Um,
over 10 miles, over 20,000 steps. I think my Fitbit said, I don't know how
yeah.
accurate this is. My Fitbit told me I burned 3,200 calories. And guys, for a person my size to burn that many calories, that's a lot of movement.
And
It's a lot of
it was
movement.
93 degrees and other
Yeah, and
stuff
it
too.
was
So it was kind of crazy. But so the thing that surprised me when I got back home and watched the race replay, because I wanted to
mhm.
see the race. When you go to the track, you can watch, bits and pieces of the race at the corners you're at. And we did. We had a great time. We sat outside turn one, went to turn five, watched a bunch of passes there, went over to see him go to hurry downs and around the carousel. We even
I
went
think
to the beach.
we even went to the beach and couldn't watch much from there. I
No.
think we actually, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we caught Palou's final pass
Yeah.
for the
Yes.
win.
Yes, we did.
Which was a really cool thing to see live. I love being at that track, but yeah, it's hard to get the scope of the full race.
Yeah.
Um,
There were 11 lead changes on that race.
mm,
And nine different leaders again. So it was a really exciting and competitive race, and another one where Alex's patience really paid off, right? I mean, he didn't lead until the
Towards the very
last,
end.
yeah, it was lap 53 of lap 55. It was when he took the lead for good. So, right?
Yeah, he's got that something that is able to close it out. And this is why we chose this race as the halfway point, right? Because up until it was the 500 where really you were like, yeah, he's definitely going to win the season now.
Right.
Like probably nobody else has a chance of coming back. And then we get a different winner in Detroit, and then Alex wins again on another oval. And you start to this one for me closed it out as, look, there's just mathematically no way he would have to stink for the rest of the season for the point lead that he's built up um to not be enough.
Right.
And watching him win here was really just like, okay, yeah, he's there. Nobody else is going to be able to catch up. Nobody else is doing what this guy is doing.
Right. I mean, Kirkwood would have had to dominate the second half of the season the way Alex did in the
Yeah.
first half to even make it close. Yeah, even Pato at that point was, yeah,
Pato was not, I looked that up. I was curious because as I'm watching through the highlights, I noticed I'm seeing way less Pato than I expected. Pato's start to the season was actually fairly weak.
hmm
Kirkwood outscored him not just in the two wins, but he really didn't factor in very frequently to a discussion about race wins.
right.
So
And
Pato had it, and actually, if you want to talk about dominating a half a season, I know he didn't quite do what Alex did in the first half, but Pato's back half was excellent. And if maybe if he had been able to start that momentum a few weeks earlier, we would have been having a different conversation toward the end of the year. It just didn't and that's why I think of this as the divider. Because for me, this was the point where for sure championship's done. I don't care about the math. We know it's Alex. Nobody else can do this at this point. So let's start looking at other stuff.
yeah, but this was also the race where I think Ferrucci kind of he had been having a good season up to that point, but it's like, oh, wait a minute, how many races in a row has he finished top five now? Right?
He was second at Detroit.
hmm
I don't remember
He
his
was
finish.
fourth or fifth at Indy. Um,
I don't remember where he finished at St. Louis.
yeah, I don't ha
Um,
I don't
but
have that in front of me, but he finished very high
third,
in a bunch of races,
and
and
then
then
third at Road America.
where he got the beer.
And he ran out of gas.
Yeah,
The only reason that fan was able to throw him the beer is because he wasn't able to do a final lap to bring the
right.
car where it was supposed to. He just had to park it because he was out of fuel.
And he
I,
happened to park right in front of the grandstands at turn one, and
you
some
know
fan
what?
had a really good arm.
Any fan from Wisconsin would have thrown a driver a Miller Lite. I would have if he had parked in front of me. I definitely had an extra Miller Lite in my little fanny pack that I absolutely would have tried to get to him. Any Wisconsinite is going to do that. So, not that that guy's not amazing. Good for you, man. But
Yep.
to me, that was more a Wisconsin moment than an individual moment, and I really loved it. Maybe one of the best prizes a driver can get after a 94-degree race in
Yeah.
those, yeah, a cold beer sounds just about right.
Yep. And again, this was a race where we sat down with the folks from Penske before the race, and we
Yeah.
asked them about, the challenges they had so far in the season, and trying to regroup after Indy and the changes in the team, and hearing them talk about new people needing to step up and that kind of stuff. But he also said to us, Road America is a Penske track, and so we were all expecting them to
Yeah.
have a little bit of better day, and
He
again, it just
he was candid about the fact that they were going to have some struggles with leadership changes. You can't say goodbye to that many years of leadership and not have a little bit of confusion about new people stepping into those roles. And I'm sure there
right.
are small things that got missed. But he did. He specifically said this is a Penske track, this is a Chevrolet track. I know we've had bad luck. He and I specifically mentioned what happened to Joseph the week prior. We talked about that.
Mhm.
Um, but it continued here.
Yeah.
They expected at least. I don't think he was acting like he thought that we were going to see multiple Penskes on the podium, but he was definitely voicing to us that he expected
I
some
would, I
improvement.
yeah, I would have, based on that conversation, I would have expected all three drivers to finish in the top half of the grid,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, and whether they were top 10 or on the podium or whatever, I don't know, but we expected them to make improvements and they didn't here. And
right.
so it was clear that from this point in the season, there was a lot of work for Penske to do.
Yeah, it was more than just, everybody kind of wondered after the 500, okay, we let go of these guys and we're not, eh, are those guys responsible for what we're viewing as bad acting? I don't know.
Mhm.
Nobody really can other than the people at Penske, but it was, I think there was maybe a kind of wondering, is this going to help them in some ways? And at Road America,
It clearly
no,
didn't. Yeah.
it's clearly not going to.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
that was the first half of the season. At this point, I think we were all looking at the season and saying, is this season going to be like Max was in F1, the previous year where he just, or the year before that where
yeah,
he just won everything? And how
yeah,
many more races is Alex going to win? Is he going
yeah.
to break? Everyone, at that point starts getting into the 10-win record, and can he tie or break it? And it almost
Hmm.
felt like a fait accompli at that point. And I was really, I think we all kind of were like, okay, let's see what
If
happens as we move forward.
if you asked me after Road America how many races I expected Alex to win with 8 races left to go, I would have said at least four,
Yeah. I would have,
but
I would have,
probably five or
I would have
six.
put the over under at 11,
Yeah. Based
and
on based on the 9 we watched,
yeah,
I would have had no question about saying he was going to win at least 10, 11 races.
yeah. And so we'll talk about the next half of the season, the second half of the season next week, and talk about why that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to be interesting looking at what changed in the second
Hmm.
half of the season, that made that happen, other than the fact that there were four ovals in
Yeah.
that half of the season, which
Well,
definitely I
I
think
mean,
changed the. But
Alex won 2 ovals in the first half, though, so it wasn't even that. But what it really, and we'll talk about this more next week, but I think the second half of the season might mean a lot for next year.
yeah,
And I'm really excited to get into that.
cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun. It's been fun revisiting the season. I look forward to talking next week about the second half, because I think it was a very exciting second half of the season.
It was great. Yeah, we
And
can't wait.
yeah, so we'll be back next week to talk about that at Rise and Drives Team Radio. Until then, we hope everyone stays safe, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.